I'm so excited to have my good friend, Aishel Francis, on the podcast today. She is an intuitive coach and healer, and she is one of the most amazing, powerful presences that you will ever experience. I have had the pleasure of getting to spend time with her in real life, so I can fully, accurately say that she is straight up magical. So I can't wait to bring you this episode today. It is going to blow your mind. So let's get into it. Okay, so I've already primed everybody so that they already know that this call is going to blow their socks off. But we decided that we're just pushing play and we're going to roll with it. And what's so wonderful about that to me, and that's how I shoot most of my podcasts, is I really like to see where it goes and see how it unfolds and let the magic take us where it's going to take us. So if you want to start out, Aishel, I told them a little bit about you, but if you just want to give like a little brief introduction to who you are, and I also told them how magical you are. So but if you just want to give a little brief introduction to who you are.
Okay, I'm Aishel. I'm based in the northeast of England, kind of like the borderlands between England and Scotland. I'm a mother to 4 children. I have a product business, but I also have a coaching and guidance business. I will introduce myself as a coach, a guide, a mentor, and a healer.
Yes, I love it. I love it. And I know you as all of those things. You are a coach, a guide, a mentor, and a healer in my life, which is part of the reason that I have been maybe begging you to come and share your magic. Because everything that you share and talk about is all things that resonate so deeply with me and with what I'm trying to do in the world as well. I feel like, you already know, like you are a soul sister of mine and as well as a guide and a mentor. And so I'm just so happy that you're here.
No, thank you so much for asking me to be on.
So we did kind of mention a little bit before we hit record. We were actually talking about gardening and all of the beautiful metaphors that come with that, because one of the things that you do love to talk about are not just gardening, but seasons and cycles and all of that. And I thought, okay, let's just go with it. So what's coming up for you?
Yeah, well, obviously, like one of the main things is the moon cycles, and especially as women, how much we are affected by cycles. And often, if you're not aware of the moon cycles and even of your own cycles, you may not be aware that your monthly cycle will actually sync to a phase of the moon. When you start tracking it, you'll begin to realize that your monthly cycle will come on the full moon or the new moon or the phases in between. Like the menstrual cycle, the Latin name for menses actually means moon. So people have known about this for a very long time, but we've become disconnected with our connections with nature because we don't spend so much time outside. We're so busy, we're rushing around. So we've forgotten about these connections that we've always had, connections of sisterhood, connections with the phases of the moon, connections with other cycles in nature, and they're so powerful for us to reconnect to them. And we can learn, not only just learn so much from them, but also when we can tap into them, like if you know that you work best like with full moon energy, that invigorates you, and you feel really creative, you can even start to plan phases of your business around this. So you can plan a launch on the full moon if that invigorates you. Obviously, if that's when it completely wipes you out and you don't want to be around anybody, not a good time to launch. But it's just having the awareness to start with of what's going on, because the moon is very, very powerful. You know, people that say, oh, I'm not really affected by this stuff. It's like the moon is so powerful, it pulls the tides in and out. It can pull the sap up in a tree, in a plant. And you really think as a human being on this planet that that's not affecting you anyway whatsoever. So the fact is there are universal laws at play. There are energetic laws at play. So it's learning about those, having that awareness, and then tapping into it and using it for your full power.
I love that. And you're right. I do feel like we've gotten so disconnected from all of that. And I feel like too, like you were mentioning, like the moon is pulling the side or the water of the ocean. And I didn't know the thing about sap out of trees. That's fascinating. But it really is, people tend to want to say, oh, it's like woo. It's all this like woo stuff. And it's like,
Right.
no, actually, a lot of it is backed and based in science, and it's
Absolutely.
ancient wisdom. But I'm curious, you mentioned like reconnecting to some of these things, and that's something that you've helped me with because I've become more aware. But what are some ways that if somebody was listening to this and they did feel a little bit disconnected from those cycles, how would one begin to reconnect?
The really basic things you can do is just called grounding. You know, just go out and be with nature. You know, in Japan, they have forest bathing because they know it's so beneficial to their health that it's just to walk in a forest, you know, just spend time in nature. Again, we have so much screen time and indoor time, and we've become disconnected to the greenery of nature. It's just like, just get outside, take your shoes off, walk in the grass, feel that vibration of how that feels beneath your feet. Again, it's science backed, you know, hospitals that have green spaces, like green courtyards in the middle, it's been proven that patients in there, that they recover quicker from operations, they heal quicker. Like, we are just made to connect with nature in green spaces. And if you don't live somewhere like in the middle of forests and hills and trees and things, there's always a way that you can do it on a small scale. You know, if you've just got a balcony, grow a few plants there. If you've just got an apartment, you can grow house plants. You know, there's different ways to connect to that. And then starting to tap into the awareness of what is the moon doing? What are the moon cycles? You know, even having the aware, when does the sun come up? When does the sun go down? All of these things, if we're just completely shut off and in our head rather than connected with nature, we're not aware of any of that. So it's just, first thing really is slowing down.
Oh my gosh. Well, please say that again. Sorry.
You know, nature doesn't rush. She's not in a hurry to get anywhere. She knows there's seasons and cycles and phases to everything. You know, the new moon isn't like, I wish I was a full moon. I really want to shine bright. The new moon is the new moon. And it's quite happy with that. And it knows there's a phase, there's a cycle we have to go through, and then there'll be a full moon. And there's so many lessons that we can learn looking at nature, how in the winter it slows down, it rests, it becomes dormant because it knows it needs to build the power to come back fresh and strong in the spring. But it doesn't like go, oh, I wish I didn't have to rest. It like really goes in on the rest, because the rest is just as important as the buds bursting through in the spring. One cannot happen without the other. And if we're rushing our way through life, having no awareness of moon cycles, what the sun's doing, when is spring, the different seasons and phases, how can we possibly reconnect to that? You have to slow down. And slowing down is a good thing. You know, we try to do 50 million things, wear 50 different hats. It's like, I'm a mother, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a cook, I'm a, you know, like so many different things. And it's just slow down, take a breath, go out in nature, put your feet in the grass, you know, connect with the rain, connect with the moon, all of these things that we used to live in and be part of. And you can feel your stress levels just fade away. You know, your blood pressure will drop, your heart rate will decrease. It's so good for our bodies, but also it's so good for the soul.
Totally. And an example of that keeps coming to my mind um because again it's like, oh yeah, just get out of nature, but this example like blew my mind. And it was one that I was kind of like, whoa, like there's something really magical happening in nature. And that was one time, this has been a couple of years ago now, but my son, we were at a grocery store and he was asking for some toy, a little car or something. And I told him no. And he, he lost his mind in a way that child has never lost his mind before or since. I mean,
Yeah.
busted blood vessels under, I don't know what it was about that day and that car, but it was something. And it was really like, I mean, crazy. Like I was affected because, as you know, I'm very empathic anyway. And I was feeling really like stressed about this like so overreaction as far as I was concerned. But so we're driving home and there's this little kind of naturey park right near our house. And I thought, let's just go. I don't know what it was. I was just like, let's just go and like reset before we go home and walk around. I mean, it was almost instant that he quit crying, he shifted his focus, he shifted his attention, and I have a picture of it because it was such a beautiful moment of how just being in nature just calmed everything down. And we do that now. Like anytime he's kind of getting really upset or he's really bored or anything, it's like, let's go outside. Let's go outside.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And so if you can think about it like that, it's like even your children, just pay attention to what is happening for them. That's happening for you also. Maybe you aren't as like, crying or whatever. Maybe you're not having an overreaction, but or maybe you are, I don't know. But just to get out, it's like, that is a really good example to me of how just literally just being outside can shift so much. So that was something that really stuck out for me. And I went, whoa, like nature is a magical beast. I don't know.
It is. It totally is. It's just such a healer, and it's a reset button. It just allows you to pause and go into the silence. Rather than always having to have like a screen or a music on or something always on the go. You can go within and go back into silence, and then we can get animal medicine messages through. We can connect with the elements. It's just the same things that people have done on this planet for thousands of years, and we've become so unconnected to that wisdom and that knowledge that is available to us. Even in the tsunami of 2004, when how many humans died, it was a tragic loss of life. So many humans, I was devastated by that. I remember watching it. My two eldest boys were really young, and I clung tightly to them, hearing stories of women who had to choose which child to hang on to as they hung on to palm trees and things. And it was devastating listening to the reports back. But no animals died. And this is one thing that really intrigued me to start with. I was like, how is there such a huge loss of human life, but the animals didn't die? And there was reports of, like in Sri Lanka, the elephants all headed up for the mountains. So they were in safety, so they weren't affected by the tsunami. And we used to have that level of connection with the planet to be able to tune into what is going on. But now we're so disconnected, we don't even hear that wisdom that is coming through, whereas the animals still have it. So if we can get back even a tiny part of being able to connect right to the vibration of the planet and hear these things that are available and come through, is so, so powerful. What is available to us when we do that.
So you kind of went there anyway, but I really haven't had any episodes where we talked about animal medicine. Could you kind of talk a little bit about kind of what you think that sort of is and does for people? And I also have a story to tell you.
Yeah, it's the wisdom that's coming through in nature to us. And like, it's a kind of joke in my house because I really believe in the messages that come through from the animal world. I think there's a lot of wisdom. I think sometimes when we are blocking things coming through to us, the animals will help us receive that message because we're either in our heads or we're busy and we're not receiving. So the animals will bring messages to us. And sometimes, you know, you'll maybe look out the window or you're doing something outside and you'll see like one bird and you're just like, oh, look, a bird, whatever it is, you know, and then you just carry on with your day. I mean, there was one, like there's a lot of pheasants, you know, they're like grouse where we live, and they're ground nesting birds. We see them like walking across through the garden and stuff. And there was one day my daughter said, oh, look, because we've got like a wisteria walkway with poles and things. So it's quite high up. It's like 10 foot in the air. And she's like, look, there's a pheasant sitting on top of that. I was like, oh, that's unusual. Carried on doing the dishes, making the dinner. And then I look up and there's 12 pheasants all sitting on top of here. And I was like, oh, that's really unusual to see, but still not receiving any message because I'm all in my head. I'm going about my day busy. And then about 10 minutes later, my daughter goes, oh, wow, look at this. And all the pheasants, these are wild birds, had come round to the front of the house where there's a glass door, and there's 12 of them standing looking into the house.
Oh my God.
And it was only at that point I was like, oh, there's a message here for me. It was like they had to slap me across the head with the pheasant animal medicine for me to actually go, oh, maybe I should go and look up what pheasant medicine is. There's something here for me. So it's starting to get into the awareness of maybe if I got that before when I'd seen the first pheasant, they wouldn't have had to go to all the trouble for that to come through to me. So I believe that everything is a sign, everything is medicine. You know, when a hawk flies past, you can check the direction it's flying in, the context of how you saw it. You know, sometimes there's medicine delivered for somebody in my family or for me. But as I say, it's a joke in my house because my two eldest children, who are 20 and 17, don't quite share my belief in it. So when I sit with my animal cards and we choose a card, you know, we choose a card, me and my two youngest, we'll choose a card for guidance for the year coming, you know. And I asked one of my eldest sons, would you like to choose a card for next year too? And his reply was, I'll choose a card when I see the rabbits sitting in the forest choosing human cards. So I don't think the whole family is all like spiritual and aligned. We have different beliefs, and that's absolutely fine as well.
Absolutely. Yes. My son, he's 7 and he'll be into it sometimes and sometimes not. So yeah, totally. Well, thank you. So what I wanted to just say is that obviously you know that I share your belief in that. And so what's funny though is I'm always sending you little like, oh, this crow's giving me a message today or whatever. And so I don't know, for me, crow comes up a lot. That's an animal medicine that I feel when I see feathers or whatever, I'm totally like outing myself here even more than ever, but or I'll be like, okay, this is a sign, or I feel like I'm on the right direction, or like you know, whatever. But anyway, right before our call, I was getting ready and I was upstairs, and of course there was this crow, and he was just like walking by the window and just like literally just walking in the middle of the road, and I was like, oh well, obviously this means that this call is about to be magical. So
well, likewise, I went outside just before the call, went and stood barefoot in the grass, and there were 3 crows flew past, and then a red-tailed hawk as well. So I was like, okay, thank you.
oh well, see, oh my gosh. Well, now all I got was one little crow. No, I'm kidding. Totally kidding. But yeah, I don't know. So I just feel like, yeah, like there are these messages that can come in so many different ways from the universe, especially if you're asking for guidance or you're praying or you're, you know, trying to be guided by on something. And then you're discarding all of these things like like you're saying, like if, 12 of a certain animal come
Right.
to your front porch and they're like, "Ding, ding, ding, ding," it's a little harder to ignore. But even just for some reason, geese had been flying over 3 days in a row, and I never see geese. So finally, like you, I was like, oh, maybe I'm supposed to be getting some kind of a message here. But you're right. Like it can come in so many different ways. So it just paying attention to the messages that are coming in is so,
Yeah.
and it's so fun, right?
Yeah.
It's so fun to tune in and listen and see how guided you actually are and supported and all of that. So
It is. It all starts with awareness. Everything starts with awareness, because without that, you stay asleep, basically. Awareness is part of the awakening, being aware that there are different things going on, there's different energies at work, and just having that awareness to begin with is always the first step, because without that, you're not going to receive anything. You're going to be there on your phone. There could be 20 hawks sitting around you and you're not even going to see them. You're not going to pay them any attention. So how do you know what is available to you unless you begin to have the awareness to tune in the first place?
And don't you think, this is an opinion, I guess, but don't you think that this pandemic, this coronavirus has almost, that's a silver lining, I feel like, anyway. I don't know if everybody is feeling that, but it's sort of forced you to become aware
Mm-hmm.
of, well, one, you were talking about resting before. It's sort of forced everybody into a resting position for a little while. And it's forced you to become aware of certain things. And it's like, to me, the good part, and maybe negative if you didn't want it, part of becoming aware is that unfortunately, or fortunately, you can't go back. You can't go back to not being awake or aware once you become awake and aware to certain things, whether it's global or personal.
Yeah, you can't unknow what you know. Once you've woken up, there's no going back to sleep. You can't go back there, because now your eyes are wide open. So you will start to receive things, you will start to see things. Everything shifts, everything is different. And you're right, that is definitely one of the things that has increased with this pandemic, is it's forced people to slow down, and people have been able to really pause and say, is this what I want? Is this the life that I want? Is this what I want for my children? Is this what I want for the next generation? Is this what we want society to look like? So, and again, that was only available in the slowing down. So how can you, let's not always ask for a pandemic to make that happen.
Right, of course.
How can you take that and put it in your own life? Where can you pause and slow down? Where can you actually get it on the schedule for you to go into silence, for you to pause, for you just to sit outside in nature? Let's not always go to the extremes of having the entire world shut down for that to happen. Look at where you can make that available, and then what can come through to you in that. People have shifted and realized they don't actually like their work. They don't like what they do. They don't want to commute for hours. And there's so many shifts happening, but that was only available in the silence and the slowing down that was gifted to people.
100%. And, I feel like I had, I've been working on this stuff for a while now, and I feel like I had kind of really been on the path designing my life, even the way that I wanted. And I slowed way down and all of that. But there was a even bigger, like forced pause in my life having my son home. And so it went even deeper for me of like, no, you can't say yes to all the things. Like you have to focus and really determine like where your time is needed, but also where you desire to spend your time. So it really forced me to pay attention to those things on an even deeper level.
Mhm.
um and and kind of like looking back over this time for myself is like really even understanding how you can always be auditing your life and being aware of places that maybe need your attention, or maybe you need to set stronger boundaries around certain things.
Mhm.
But it's just really interesting um how this time I feel like, again, we were talking about gardening before, like I may not have started a garden if it hadn't have been for this. And really now I'm like out there, hands in the soil, just like loving it. Like I'm like plant lady now. um or whatever, I'm getting there. But and it's even something that I can do with my son, and I'm realizing like even my husband's getting involved in it. So it's like it's even brought us like closer as a family, doing things that we want to do together. So I don't know, just random thoughts about how we can really use any time that we have in our lives to reflect back on what's working, what's not working. And like you said, not wait for a horrible global pandemic to force us into that.
Yeah. And then again, when anything happens like that, you always go, where else in life am I waiting for a catastrophe to happen before
Mm.
it shines a light on an area of my life that needs attention? Can I not slow down and address those areas before it gets to pandemic level in my own life?
Totally. Totally. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. So oh my gosh, well, we're like covering so many things here. So what else can we cover? Let's just fit it all in one podcast. And now I'm realizing like I just wanted to talk to you. No. So what are some other ways that if people wanted to focus on like learning more about cycles and the moon and these kinds of things, like other than obviously following you on Instagram, but like what are some, go follow her by the way. What are some other ways that people could start kind of tapping into that power and magic of that?
Well, I would say it comes to yourself. Everything is about self because it's about yourself, your energy, the powerhouse that you are, regardless of anything else that's going on. So, really getting to know yourself, remembering who you are on a cosmic level. I'm not talking about remembering who you are when you're a little girl. I mean, remembering who you are on a huge level. Who were you before you came to this planet? I'm talking big size remembering. And when we start to do that, it's tapping into that. We come with an inner guidance. We have a guiding system within us, but we learn to distrust it, especially by being praised for logical thinking.
Mm.
Society's set up for logical thinkers. So who's got the best grade point average in high school? Who's got the degree and the diploma, and oh, well done, you're so intelligent and things. But that takes us out of our heart center, and puts us all in our head. So for me, I would challenge that and say, get out of your head and back into your heart, because you have your own intuition, but we've been taught to distrust it because it's like, no, you should go here, you should do these things. So it's tuning back in to that inner voice, that inner guidance system, because we all need to work from guidance, but so much of that is available within us right now.
And do you think that this, obviously it extends to men and women, but do
Yeah.
you think that it applies maybe a little bit more to women? This kind of um, breeding out of the tuning into the intuition and
Yeah, and also we have it worse because we're supposed to know, it's women's intuition,
mm,
right? It's like, shouldn't you know what to do because of your women's intuition? But we've become so disconnected from it again. It's like we're no different from men. Like, even if we get a gut feeling or a guiding intuition, we often just ignore it. Like, if you can walk into a place, if you're highly intuitive, you can walk into a place, a restaurant or a bar, and you can instantly feel the energy in there. But if you're going there to meet a business partner, you just shut that off. Oh, it's fine, I'll just go and have a meal anyway. So even when we're being guided in certain areas, we often shut it down. You know, we can be guided for like people that we meet and, oh, avoid this and avoid that. But again, the logical brain will jump in and say, oh, you're just talking rubbish, and we'll talk ourselves out of situations. But in my experience, when you do that is when things start to go a bit pear-shaped. And then when you look back, you can go, oh, I should have followed my intuition. I should have followed my guidance. And then we get into guilt and shame and all of these things about ourselves, and we just drag ourselves down even more. So it's not really about should have, could have, all of those kind of emotions and feelings. It's just learning to trust yourself step by step. So if you follow your intuition on something really basic, like go clothes shopping and trust the first thing, you'll be attracted to a certain color. Go with your instincts, go with your intuition and just buy it. Don't go into 50 other shops and then come back to the first shop and buy the first thing that you liked anyway, right? Not that any of us ever do that, but it's just like learning these little steps of intuition, because we need to build that trust with ourselves again, because it's such a terrible place to be when you can't even trust yourself. Because there's so much self-worth and self-love attached to that as well, that when that has been washed out of us, even trusting in our own guidance, everything else will go haywire. Everything else will be off. It's all out of alignment. So all of the alignment, all of those steps, everything starts with self and tuning into who we really are.
Yeah, you basically just described the first 25 years of my life. Maybe 30, I don't know. But you're right. And so it's so interesting, because as I'm really tuning back into that intuition over the last couple of years and really trusting myself more and it is amazing how that is all connected and how it changes so much of your life. And then, because I feel like I've experienced both. I've experienced the really shutting down of trusting my intuition, trusting myself. And I've always been really intuitive, but I never would trust it. And I would be like, no, or, whatever, like it, again, like kind of like going into my head of, well, that's not logical. That doesn't make any sense. And then I would, like you're saying, then you go against it and you're like, oh, well, that's why my life was. And then when you really and then the opposite side, and I've experienced that as well, when you really start tuning into it and tapping into it, then things, like you said, start to fall into alignment. And isn't it interesting that most of my work in the last 10 years has been for myself around accepting myself, loving myself, not beating myself up, all of that. And then of course wanting to help other people with that as well. But I just find that so fascinating too, that it's like they're all connected. It's all connected. It's kind of all one thing.
It is. It's accepting yourself for who you really are. And that's why, that's why I talk so much about remembering, because we try to fit into certain roles and certain labels, but they're not even us. Like so many things about our identity are labels that other people gave us, but it's so ingrained, it's so brainwashed into us, we don't even realize that they're not our own labels. So at any time you can change those. It's all within your power. You can decide who you are, what your life looks like, what these roles mean. Everything is down to you and your choice, and it's all within your power. And that remembering of self, remembering of who you really are, is embracing all the parts of you. Everybody has parts of themselves that they feel they want to run away from, that they're ashamed of because society says, oh, it should look like this or look like that. But really loving yourself is embracing every single part of you. And that means the dark and the light, because nobody is 100% light. And again, this is ancient wisdom. This is yin and yang. There's always dark with light. There's polarities. One can't exist without the other. They come together. These are laws of the universe. There's no running away from it. But we've been taught to shun our darkness, that darkness is bad, darkness is evil, and all of these things. So when we see parts of ourselves that we may identify as dark, we block them. We don't accept them. We certainly don't embrace them. So we push them aside. But that's rejecting part of our core essence of who we are. So how would it look different if you embrace the darkness and you said, bring it on. Parts of me are dark. I'm going to welcome that. Darkness isn't bad. It's where we came from. The universe is dark. Carbon is dark. You know, it's just the way that we've been taught that all things dark are bad. You know, if you think a seed is planted in darkness, you know, it embraces that darkness. Yes, it reaches for the light, but it actually needs the darkness to germinate. It needs to be covered. We begin life in darkness, where inside the womb, that's a comforting place. That's where our life begins. And yet, as we grow up, we're told, oh no, that's not part of you that you accept. You don't accept the darkness. So again, what's available to people if they just said, no, I accept myself fully 100% for all aspects of who I am, and really stand in that. And that's when you can really allow in your power. And when you start to allow in your power and stand in your power, you start to shift things with boundaries. You start to shift things of what you're able, you know, like what you're here to tolerate. You start to shift, who am I as a person? What am I here for? What am I here to do on this planet? What's my dharma? And then all of these other things just start tumbling out, and there's no stopping, because then you're in momentum. And again, it's another law of the universe. You know, once you're in momentum, I forget the exact physics. I need to call in my eldest son who's studying physics. But basically, something in motion will only come to rest when something else is enacted upon it. So keep yourself in motion when you're learning these things, and these things are coming through to you. But so often we'll get into motion and go, oh, wow, this is amazing. And then we stop ourselves. Right. Because we get into doubt, we get into fear, we get into all of these like, oh, I'm not sure about this. Who am I to do this? And all of these things. So it's keeping yourself in motion, in that momentum, as the forces are helping us. We're being assisted. Once you're in alignment, you are rolling. Keep going, because there's amazing things that can come through to us when we're in that state.
Oh, I got chills on that one. Oh, yeah. And I think too, like, I just am recognizing it in so many ways in my life. So it's like everything that you're saying, I have something that I'm thinking of that proves that to be true. You know what I mean? And so I think that's why I got chills, because I was like, oh, yeah, that's so good. There's so many examples. And I think everyone has an example at some point in their life of seeing their power, of seeing that true in their lives, and seeing themselves kind of go, oh, well, you got to stop right here, because I don't know what's beyond this point. So maybe I'll shrink back down a little bit, just a little bit right here. And then it's like, but you don't have to. You don't have to. You can blow the lid off that thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, some of us even are afraid to shine too brightly, because it's like, who am I to shine bright? You know, it might make other people feel bad, and it might, but I always say, who are you not to shine bright? Because how do you know that you're not the light shining in the darkness for somebody else to come forward? You don't know who is watching you. You don't know who you can bring with you. You know, your power might bring forth 10 more people, 100 people, 1,000 people. It's not a question of who am I to do this? It's more a question of who am I not to do this? There's no other person just like you on this planet. There never will be. Each of us here on this planet is completely unique in this place and time. So if we don't shine our light brightly, it will never, ever have a chance to shine again, because even if somebody else shines their light, it's not done in the same way that we do it. And maybe somebody right now needs to hear that message in our way from us. Maybe they've heard it 100 times before from other people, but it's the way that we deliver the message, the way that we speak to people that will allow them to hear it and allow them to start in their motion and get into their trajectory and to get into their alignment, and then all of those things become available for them. So who are we to stand and stop that? Because then it becomes about self, about ego, and none of us want to be there. We want to be in alignment, we want to be moving with spirit, and then all of these things become available to us, and not just to us, but all of the other people who can come in through us.
Well, I'm just going to take this mic and I'm just going to drop it. Because that's what that needs. Bam. In case you ever thought any different, bam. Just listen to that. Oh my gosh. Well, I think that's a perfect place to end because I'm like about to cry. So I'm like, I have tears in my eyes. Maybe that was for me. No, I'm kidding. That was for a lot of people, truly. Like, I think every person on the planet could use that message, and to just like put it on their like phone and just listen to it every day because it's so beautiful. So thank you for shining your beautiful light, because it is one of the lights that allows me to shine, truly. Now I really am going to cry. Okay, moving on. Can you please tell people where they can find you? Where should somebody, after they listen to this and they're going to cry like I did, where should they come and find you?
You can find me, I'm mainly on Instagram, so that's at Eichel Francis, ICHEL, and then Francis, just one word. And also my website, which is the same, eichelfrancis.com. You can find out about my story, about my family, all kind of ways. You can find out, I have a Moon Circle membership, which
that is straight up magic. Like, oh my gosh. Straight up magic, y'all.
Go really deep into cycles and seasons and connecting with ancient wisdom and things in there. You can find out about that on my website, or you can find out about ways to work with me as well. All of that is on the website. That's eichelfrancis.com.
Yes. And I would just say, if you were drawn to any, like, I kind of feel like we did like a light version of some of the things that you talk about in the group. And so this is perfect because it really gives people an opportunity to see the things that you bring to the table inside of the group. But it's like, no, like we go like way deeper. I think everybody cries on every call. This is like really powerful stuff, and the group is so incredible and amazing, and everybody in it is so beautiful and amazing. It's just lots of incredible women learning how to shine their lights in the world and learning how to work with nature and work with cycles and all of that. So I would definitely encourage you, if you have, and if you resonated with anything that we talked about, to go check that out, because it's really been such a blessing in my life. So, well, thank you so much. You know, I love and adore you.
Very much likewise. Thank you so much for inviting me on. It's just been awesome talking about all of this with you, my fellow crow sister.
That's right. Now everybody knows. I'm just kidding. I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much. Go check Eichel out, and we will see you in the next episode.